Hello listeners everywhere. Welcome to the Archive of Audio Antiquities, a voyage into the vault of wonders on the wireless. In a moment, Simon Exton and Ken Moss will be here to speak to you.
Hello everyone, and a very warm welcome back to the Archive of Audio Antiquities. I'm Ken Moss.
I'm Simon Exton.
And this time we're listening to the Big Finish Productions version of Treasure Island. When young Jim Hawkins unexpectedly inherits a treasure map, he little knows what adventures await him. Pursued by pirates, betrayed by his friends, and beset by skullduggery, Jim must brave high seas and low cunning before he reaches the shores of Treasure Island. His fellow treasure hunters include the inflexible Captain Smollett, the indefatigable Dr. Livesey, and the irrepressible Squire Trelawney. And then there's the ship's cook, a seafaring man with one leg, who goes by the name of Long John Silver. This was first released in 2013 and stars Tom Baker as Long John Silver, Nicholas Farrell as the narrator, and a host of other actors as well. First things first, Dr. Exton, do you have any alumni for us?
Tom Baker's in it.
I've seen some dreadful things in my time on this earth.
A map!
Not just any map, Jim. A treasure map.
I've lived my life among some of the wickedest men that God ever allowed upon the sea.
Take my arm and I'll... Ah!
Oh, boy. Take me in straight or I'll break your arm. Come now, man!
And it's for the worst of them, as I want you to keep your weather eye open.
Heard of him? He was the bloodthirstiest buccaneer that sailed.
You must keep watch, Master Hawkins, for a seafaring man with one leg.
I'm looking for a Long John Silver.
Such is my name, to be sure. And who may you be?
Hawkins, sir. Jim Hawkins.
Raise the anchor.
Raise anchor!
The Hispaniola had begun her voyage to the Isle of Treasure.
Nicholas Farrell's in it, who is superb in everything he's ever been in. But we've also got Gareth Armstrong as Ben Gunn and Israel Hands. I seem to remember him playing Shylock in something. We've got Tony Millen, he played Dr. Livesey and Blind Pew. And he was in,
Pew, pew, pew.
Pew, pew.
Pew, pew.
He was in any sitcom you'd care to mention from the 80s and 90s. Tony Haygarth's in it as Billy Bones. What do we know Tony Haygarth from? I'm going to say Nigel Neal.
Oh, Kinvig.
Kinvig.
Oh, dear.
Oh, yes. And, of course, we've got the Big Finish regulars, Barnaby Edwards, Nicholas Pegg, and Nicholas Briggs.
I think we now say Nicholas fucking Briggs whenever he turns up.
Yes, it's not a surprise that
Repeat
Mr. Briggs
after me,
is in
Nicholas
this.
fucking Briggs.
Anyway, this was spread over 2 CDs. It's a 2-hour drama from the Big Finish Classics range. They did a few things which I didn't really get into, I've got to be honest. They did Phantom of the Opera and Picture of Dorian Gray, which I think went on to become a series, and probably a few other things as well. I've got to be honest, there's 2 reasons why I've wanted to do this. Or 3, really. Firstly, we're doing a pirate season. Second, Treasure Island is my favourite book of all time. And 3, Tom Baker's in it. I'm going to gush about this quite a lot. I know Treasure Island very well.
You enjoy yourself.
Well, so I'm going to come to the most cynical of the two of us first. What did you think of this?
I enjoyed it.
Good.
It is a story very much of its time, and it's extremely linear. There's an awful lot of boy's own adventure and with one bound Jim was free. But, you know, it kind of invented that format, so I'm not going to hold that against it. It's a book of its time. I read this when I was at school, and I remember quite enjoying it. Experiencing it again now, I can understand why young me liked it in the same way as I read all of the Swallows and Amazons books and liked them, and all of the Narnia books and liked them, and then adult me would probably go, what the fuck are you reading that for? But I enjoyed it at the time. It is a good story. It's just linear, and stories like this have been done better by subsequent authors, but that doesn't take away from how this was the original, and it's still entertaining. I did enjoy listening to it. I'm not planning to listen to it again.
I mean, for those who don't know, Treasure Island is a late 18th century book written by Robert Louis Stevenson. If you've not been exposed to it, to be honest, in today's age, I'm not 100% surprised because it's fallen off the radar as a classic to be read in schools. It's just been replaced with other things. But it is the original pirate story. This was the template for all pirate stories that came in front of it. This audio adaptation, I must say, it's very Pirates of the Caribbean in its approach. The sound design, as with pretty much every Big Finish drama that they've ever done, is spot on. You are completely catapulted into every scenario that they put you in, whether it's the Admiral Benbow, or the ship itself, or Treasure Island, or the dock where the Hispaniola has been constructed. You are there. The cast is exceptional. I've never heard this before. I've specifically saved it for while we're doing this pirate season. I didn't know what to expect from Tom Baker. I must admit that part of me was expecting Captain Rum from Blackadder 2.
Yes, I can understand.
I am actually glad that he's not. It would have sent the whole thing up. And it's Tom Baker as this grizzled old sea dog. And it does work. It's older Tom Baker rather than Tom Baker at his Tom Baker excesses, unrestrained. I actually think his performance in this, considering what the role is actually quite muted. And I'm very glad about it, although the casting is brilliant. Then you've got Nicholas Farrell as the narrator, who is ostensibly older Jim Hawkins from the story, reading or recounting this tale to his young son James. He's got a very, very rich narration voice. I think he was the perfect choice to do this. In fact, I can't actually imagine anyone else doing it.
To be honest, there isn't a bad performance in here. Even Nicholas fucking Briggs puts in a good performance. He just puts in the same performance he puts in every other time.
Oh, I really wish Big Finish didn't cast him in everything. Okay, yeah, I really wish Nick Briggs wouldn't cast himself in everything. I know it's a cost thing. I get it.
Is it bollocks? It's an ego thing.
Possibly a little of both, but it's the same.
It's an ego thing. They could afford to share that work around actors who need the exposure, who are up and coming in their career, who just need a bit of a helping hand. And he's write the theme tune, sing the theme tune. Yeah, he puts in a competent performance, but he puts in the same competent performance each time, and it becomes wearing. And I really wish they'd take a step back and say, if it was anybody who wasn't actually in charge, would we be giving this many minor roles to the same actor?
I will give a shout out to Barnaby Edwards here. He actually adapted this for audio and appears in it as Squire Trelawney. He's been in lots of Big Finish, and he always plays a very similar role. I remember him from Storm Warning. He was the guy who designed the R101, and he's got that very clipped upper English gentleman voice that absolutely needs to be for this sort of thing. So the casting of him, despite the fact he's in a billion other things as well, I actually think is rather good. Everybody else, yeah, even down, and it has to be said, the young boy who plays Jim Hawkins. Now, in my head, I had the young boy from The Curse of the Black Spot, the Matt Smith episode, but it ain't. And frankly, I'm surprised they didn't get him, because he would have been a perfect fit and identical.
At the end of the day, that was a sort of homage to Treasure Island. And it was a pretty good one. I prefer it because it's a bit more modern in terms of its production, its writing, and the fact that it's not so linear. But, you know, Treasure Island was, 20
220 years old at least.
Yeah, so we can forgive it being a little bit old-fashioned.
I mean, there's not an awful lot to say about Treasure Island. It's one of those stories that it is real typical pirate fare. Band of rogues come together, bit of infighting, they sail on a ship to an island looking for treasure, they find the treasure, there's a fight, they come home, huzzah! That is Treasure Island. It really is the prototype for pretty much every pirate story that came after it.
Yeah.
To me, it's still one of the best. I think the only one for me that's even come close to capturing that feel is actually Pirates of the Caribbean. And
Jamaica Inn is marvellous.
Do you know, I'm ashamed to say I've never read Jamaica Inn, and I think I would adore it because all that Cornish smugglers stuff I really love. Give me a précis of Jamaica Inn or just a background to it.
No, because if you're going to read it, I'm not going to ruin it for you.
But is it that sort of smugglers' Kiar setting?
Yes, but it's not a million different locations. It's much more Cornwall-based. It's very, very much worth reading.
Then it's going on the Amazon list tonight. I think I should indulge myself. In terms of adaptations of Treasure Island, I don't know how many you've seen, read or heard. Well, not read, but...
I've seen Muppets Treasure Island. I like that a lot. But, you know, Tim Curry, what's not to love?
Muppets? I'm surprised they didn't do more of those. They did Christmas Carol, they did Treasure Island, and then they didn't do any more. And
well, in those two, they'd got the two extremes, and anybody else would fail to be the serious dramatic actor that Michael Caine was, or the joining in with the Muppets on a Muppety level that Tim Curry was. It was completely one end of the performance to the other, and what are they going to get in between?
I understand that Michael Caine treated the Muppets as if they were other actors. Tim Curry treated himself as if he was the Muppet.
Yeah. And those are really the two extremes of the performance that you could do. If you're not going to completely commit to either of those, then you're going to fail in your comparison to both. I mean, that won't be the reason they didn't do any more, because it's a money-making thing that they won't have made artistic decisions about stopping. It's whichever the more recent of the ones is, didn't make enough money, so they didn't make any more. And I think the more recent is Treasure Island, isn't it?
It is, yeah. They made Christmas Carol first, which you know I love.
Yes, you love a lot of weird stuff.
It's the only one of Dickens' novels I really, really like. The rest of them, not so much. But in terms of an adaptation of Treasure Island, I have to say this is really up there. I will be listening to this again. This is perfect summer listening. It's not really something, if I'm honest, that suits a cold winter's night. I listened to this in darkness, surrounded by candlelight, on a warm summer's night. I think actually it would do very well if you were in some sort of seaside country pub or even on a beach in summer. It's what I call the place-time element. Yes, I'm waiting for Dr. Exton to roll his eyes.
No, not at all. I think you're absolutely right.
Oh, really? You
Yeah.
see, I don't expect anyone else to really get that, but I get a lot of pleasure from either listening to or certainly reading things in an environment or at a time of year or in a place where I'm going to get the most out of them and be absorbed by them.
No, I understand that completely. I'm more like that with music than with films or any kind of drama, to be honest, because when I'm reading or watching or listening to some kind of drama, I'm generally completely focused on that drama.
You see, I can't watch Horror of Fang Rock on a hot sunny day. It's got to be on a wet day in winter. But I am drifting somewhat.
You're kind of not, because you're talking about the way that you enjoy watching this or experiencing this particular story. And that's a reasonable discussion of how you react to the story. Now, I can understand where you're coming from, but I don't really experience things like that way. But I completely understand the whole having something that puts you in a particular frame of mind, and you can't really listen to it or experience it other than being in that particular frame of mind / location. But I get it completely.
Oh, splendid. It's just something, and more with audio, I think, than visual material, but there are the odd things like Muppets Christmas Carol is very much a Christmas Eve thing. The Day the Earth Caught Fire is a day when it's absolutely incendiary outside. I introduced Dawn to that last year on a hot day. It was about 35, 36 degrees. We had to move to a different house because it was so hot. That was perfect for watching that. Before we wander off too far, shall we rate this in earworms?
Absolutely.
This is the song that never ends. Yes, it goes on and on, my friends.
What do you think?
In terms of earworms, it's a 7. It's not a story I would really have chosen to listen to. It's not a story I would choose to listen to again. It's not really my kind of thing. However, what they've done, they have done extremely well. And if this was my kind of story, I'd be rating this a 10 because it's a very, very good adaptation.
Fair enough. It's a solid 10 out of 10 for me. I've gone into this with a cocked eye. I didn't know quite what I was going to get out of it because the sound of Big Finish things has always been very good. The adaptation or sometimes the direction or the casting, sometimes less so, and it's let down the source material. In this case, the adaptation is spot on. Hats off, Barnaby Edwards. You've done very well with the source material and trimmed out a lot of, frankly, extraneous dialogue and descriptive passages that don't really enhance the experience.
But were of their time.
And, considering when it was written, it's actually quite a modern style of writing and stands up very well that some of the 19th century stuff doesn't. So, top marks there. In terms of the casting, I think it's absolutely spot on. Loved it. The performances are wonderful, and the way that the actions are described and the locations and some of the action sequences, which go on a lot longer in the book, particularly the scene where the Hispaniola is beached, and then it tips to 45 degrees and this Jim and Israel have a gun battle. It's so beautifully done. You feel like you're there. With a combination of the acting, the narration, the sound design, I was really impressed with this. This is definitely going on the re-listen pile, and I will be coming back to it probably, if not once a year, certainly on a regular basis. So yeah, hats off, Big Finish. I really, really enjoyed this, and it's very rare for me to enjoy something this much.
And they'll continue singing it forever just because.
Dr. Exton, it's over to you. What have you got for us to listen to?
Podcast of the week this month is something that I have been absolutely obsessed about since a certain co-host appeared on it. And that is Desert Planet Picks, which is a Doctor Who fan version of Desert Island Discs that is hosted by the incomparable Joe Ford. It's Doctor Who fans choosing things that they would like to take to a desert planet and what desert planet they'd like to take it to. And I've been quite obsessed by this and have listened to a huge number of editions of it over the last couple of weeks. And it is massively worth listening to.
It's a marvellous format. I was flattered to be asked on as part of Joe's first run as producer. I've always wanted to be on Desert Island Discs. It's never going to happen. So this is the next best thing. I had a whale of a time doing it. And actually, some of the questions that are asked are quite difficult to screw down. What's the one food you take, the one photograph you take, the one music track, the one book? Screwing all of those things down is a lot harder than you think.
They get some marvellous people on it, and it is very, very entertaining. I have written pages of notes about this and done an awful lot of thinking, and I would like to be on this pretty much more than guesting on any other podcast.
Oh, we're on the Smugglers next time. Oh,
Doctor Who and the Smugglers, Ben and Polly, how marvellous. It's a wonderful, wonderful story. Thank God for the Australian and New Zealand censors. The story must have made no sense to anybody watching it in Australia, but fuck that, we've got a lot of surviving clips from it.
For those who don't know, this is William Hartnell's penultimate Doctor Who story. It doesn't exist on film. We are lucky enough to have it on audio. So we will be listening to the BBC CD release next time. and both of us are wildly excited about this as the conclusion to our Pirates season.
Spoilers, it's going to score high.
So until next time, everyone, thank you so much for joining us again in the archive. We'll be back next time. You know what it is. If you want to listen along, you know where to go. It's available on the BBC iPlayer, I believe. So do enjoy yourselves. Thank you for being with us. We'll see you soon. Ta-ta.
Bye now.
The archive of audio antiquities featured Simon Exton and Ken Moss, and the announcer was Jenny at Blue Box 99. All featured soundtracks are the property of their respective producers, and no infringement of copyright is intended. Title music was by Edward White, and the programme was produced by Maverick Productions. For more information, please visit maverickproductionsuk.blogspot.com or find us on social media.